Joe, let's get into Joker Folie 2. What went wrong, what we thought of the movie, the whole deal. And before we do, let me just say this again to the audience. While we do try to avoid any major plot spoilers in our reviews, who gives a fuck about Joker 2, but whatever. It's impossible to give an honest review of these stinking movies without talking about them in their entirety. And so if we're reviewing a movie that you don't want spoiled in the least, not even a little bit, we recommend that you play it safe. You put us on mute or whatever you need to do, and then rejoin us when we move on to the next movie. Just keep an eye on the old screen graphics. That'll tell you what movie we're reviewing. All right.
If you don't want us to spoil Batman 50 with a spin-off series, Joker 2, based on the comic book character for children, the Joker, and you don't want to know what happens, then you might want to skip ahead.
Joe is contemptuous of you for even caring about spoilers. I understand your point of view a little bit. I also understand Joe's point of view. I'm in the middle.
Thank you.
I'm in the middle. But we do a disclaimer now, so now no one can complain.
No,
anymore.
I actually like the disclaimer is healthy. It's funny for Joker.
Nice, right?
It's funny for Joker too.
It also just makes it feel like this is a professional operation. You know?
It is a professional operation.
Thank you. You're right. Joker Folie Deux, the sequel to 2019's The Joker, reunites director Todd Phillips, star Joaquin Phoenix, co-writer Scott Silver, and DP Lawrence Sher, who we love. As bad as this movie is, it's not Lawrence Sher's fault.
It
looks good. It also stars Lady Gaga, Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener, Zazie Beetz, Steve Coogan, and Harry Laude, my dude from HBO's Industry.
Yeah.
What the hell? This cast is great.
It is great.
It's based on the DC Comics characters and produced and distributed by Warner Brothers. Folie Deux picks up where the Joker left off with Arthur Fleck, a.k.a. the Joker, but also maybe not the Joker.
Famously, a.k.a. not the Joker.
Imprisoned at Arkham State Hospital while he awaits his trial for the murder of late-night talk show host Murray Franklin. R.I.P. Murray Franklin.
Wait, they don't call it asylum? I guess Phillips went woke. Arkham what? Arkham Mental Health Facility? What the fuck was that?
Yeah, it's like supposed to be a hellhole.
Yeah, it's supposed to like...
Yeah, it wasn't like Bob Kane was like you know...
A man who's a crocodile lives there, right? Arkham Mental Health
It's officially
Facility.
called Arkham State Hospital.
Okay, sorry,
now.
go ahead. Yeah,
okay.
all right, sorry.
At Arkham, he meets Harleen Quinzel, a.k.a. Harley Quinn, and they bond and begin a tempestuous relationship. Arthur goes on trial. The trial takes up the majority of the movie, and throughout the trial, his cult status in Gotham grows, and his followers look for ways to help their leader. Folie Deux, also known as shared psychosis, is a psychiatric syndrome in which symptoms of a delusional belief are transmitted from one individual to another. But all of that is like describing the Titanic as a big boat, Joe. What people really want to hear about is the frickin' disaster of this movie. Mm-hmm. So let's start by looking at the history of Joker 2 and try to pinpoint how, when, where, and why it all went wrong. So I'm going to take you back, Joe. I'm going to take you on a little journey.
Is this a journey about Joker?
It is. It's about the making of Joker Folie 2. And it starts in June 2021, all right? Things are changing over at Warner Brothers, right down the street here in Burbank. Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdy take over as co-heads of Warner Brothers movie studio in early June 2021. And, of course, Warner Brothers is part of this whole Warner Brothers Discovery conglomerate run by the much maligned, oft maligned David Zaslav. And one of the first decisions that DeLuca and Abdy make is that they decide to move forward with a Joker sequel. And I want you, as we go along, to tell me, like, when does this start to go sort of awry? You know, when does the problem start to arise? I mean, how are we doing so far?
So far, everyone's doing great, except maybe the merger of Warner Brothers Discovery.
Sure.
But assuming that has to happen, and assuming Zaslav's CEO, this makes all the sense in the world. Zaslav's job's to turn the ship around, and he goes to Abdy and DeLuca, and he says, what do we got? Cook it up. Go to the DC world. Yep. Make me some money, fools. And they look it up. Joker made $1 billion. And
Here we go.
No, so far,
so good.
So far, I love it.
Perfect gameplay.
Great idea.
And in particular, Zaslav was looking to recover from the disaster of Project Popcorn. You remember Project Popcorn? Project Popcorn was the name. I actually didn't know that was the name for it, but that was that terrible move where they just sent their entire 2021 slate to Max. Remember, they just put all the movies on Max.
Project Popcorn.
And that's how they lost Christopher Nolan.
That's how they, I know. It's been really tough over there.
So that was
WB.
If that decision could not have gone worse, it was apparently called Project Popcorn internally. So morons run the movie studios, people. I don't know if you know that or not. But
people were seduced by tech business plans.
Sure. So Project Popcorn did not go well. So Zaslav was looking to reinvest in big theatrical releases.
Great idea.
And he says, go to existing IP. What do we got? Well, Joker was the biggest R-rated movie of all time, and it won Oscars. It was everything. Let's do that.
Done.
So they didn't just greenlight it. It was one of the first things they greenlight, and I'm sure they were like, in their minds, they were like, okay, well, we've got our safety. We checked that box. We know we're going to win on Joker 2. Now let's go into the harder decisions.
They thought that for years, until like 3 weeks
Until like
ago.
3 weeks
Isn't
ago.
that crazy?
Until Venice. Yeah. And why was that the case, though? Because normally with a project like this, the studio, doesn't matter who you are, the studio's going to be over your shoulder. You're fucking with house money. This is like our IP. We own this IP. I know you have your vision. You're an artist. Usually the studio is going to maintain a very sort of, close oversight over these projects, or at least some degree of oversight.
There's the first sin, is the some degree of oversight. I understand it from the talent retention perspective. I know we like to deride Phillips because he makes lowbrow movies, or whatever you want to call it, or highbrow, lowbrow, or whatever
like
Phillips does, whatever.
Yeah.
But Phillips's talent at WB, having somebody like that on the books, like the Hangover franchise and Joker, are humongous wins. And he's made other movies that were successful as well. We like to roll our eyes, but that is good talent to keep in house, to keep making movies with. And they just got there. DeLuca and Abdi just got there. Phillips just made the studio $1 billion, and Zaslav doesn't know anything about making movies. He comes from TV, so he's going to let everybody do it. So there was a lot of yes, anding. I heard that DeLuca and Abdi, they almost immediately, you're going to get to a criticism, I'm sure, about the budget of this film. But even at this point, in the green lighting of this film, they're paying Phillips, they're paying Joker. I just called Joaquin Phoenix Joker,
well,
as if that was his name. They're paying Joke, man. They're paying Joker. They're paying.
They got guaranteed $20 million each for Phoenix and Phillips, which is not crazy. I mean, we talked about how Clooney and Pitt got $45 million each.
No, it's certainly not crazy. That's how people get paid.
Yeah.
Like you get paid on the sequel for the amazing, massive hit on number one.
Yeah, and next to Christopher Nolan, who had done more for Warner Brothers in recent history than Todd Phillips between Hangover and the first Joker? But
you lost and pissed him off. You need to keep Phillips happy. You need to keep the couple people that you still haven't pissed off happy. So they give him carte blanche and they start spending money, which I'm sure you're going to say. For one of the first moves they make is they overpay Gaga. Like, she was coming in at whatever amount, and in order to get this movie over the finish line, they wanted to greenlight this so hard that they paid Gaga a ton of money, $15 million. Which now the budget's at 45, and we only have 3 people signed up for the project.
Yep. So the budget's
and the
already
2 of the 3 most annoying people on the planet, Phillips and Joaquin, who are about to skyrocket said budget.
Yes. So Phillips was given, in addition to this, not really controlling the budget, letting the budget balloon, because again, they're like, well, the first one had $1 billion, so we're fine. But they're trying to make people happy, and they just got there. But this is the ultimate. Don't count your chips before they're cash. This is the ultimate example of that. And I think where, like we said, where it really starts to go off the rails is Phillips is given an extraordinary level of autonomy on this thing. He's given final cut. There was no test screenings. There was no test screenings of this movie. And like the reason given was that they wanted to avoid like spoilers getting leaked, but it's like
obviously not true.
Avengers Endgame did test screenings. Okay, there's ways around that. There's ways around that. So that was just bullshit. This was all about appeasing Phillips, and also, as we'll talk about, was a direct result of Warner Brothers and DC being in this state of transition and flux, and Joker 2 is getting made basically sort of while everything is changing, and so it's able to do all this stuff sort of under the radar, outside of oversight, outside of the normal oversight,
and
because of the chaos of Warner
and Abdi, though, want to push that message, and they want to say this happened in a vortex of who knows what.
They've tried to distance themselves from the movie, but like, y'all greenlit it.
What I'm saying is, not only did they greenlight it, and not only did they enthusiastically greenlight it, not only did they let the budget explode, they overpaid Lady Gaga, and then they started doing things like shooting in downtown Los Angeles, shooting in Los Angeles.
So even when Warner Brothers had feedback on the project, which was minimal, it was still ignored by Todd Phillips. Sources say David Zaslav met one-on-one with Phillips shortly after Warner and Discovery merged in 2022. And he was open to filming in Los Angeles if the director would make the sequel at a lower price point. So, yeah, we'll do Los Angeles, but you got to lower the freaking budget because that's, very expensive. So you got to cut costs elsewhere, basically, is what he's saying. The studio preferred London, where it would have cost about 20% less to film, but Phillips insisted on shooting in Los Angeles, and the budget didn't change. So Zaslav was like, hey, let's do a little quid pro quo here, and Phillips was like, no, I'm doing both things my way, and I guess that was contractual. He had final cut. He had autonomy. He could just make these decisions. I didn't know you could have final cut over the budget. Like, what is happening there? What is happening?
Right. Go
like,
ahead.
honestly, like, I'm no fan of David Zaslav. A reasonable request that favors the success of the movie financially.
That we usually champion this type of auteur bluster, but this episode we will not be championing this bluster because
it doesn't always work.
Doesn't deserve our defense of this bluster.
Look, there are like without siding with like these massive corporate hegemonies. I'm talking about just like the infrastructure of a movie studio. It is not like. It is not always opposed to the success of the movie. In many cases, it facilitates the success of the movie because checks and balances are there for reasons, and it can become excessive, like it was, in the '60s, and then that's when like studios sort of give more control to the auteurs, but then in the '80s it swings back, at post Jaws, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the pendulum swing of the history of Hollywood.
But think about also like immediately Zaslav gets there and just guts the fucking place. If Phillips wanted studio help, he's probably looking around. Who the hell is he going to ask?
Good point. So this is just like the studio's in chaos.
Yeah, it's just
and this movie
fired.
is just getting to do whatever the fuck it wants, budget-wise, creative-wise, etc. And in this case, it could have used some oversight. Also, some key people who were in on the first one who are not in on the second one. Bradley Cooper, who, whatever you think of him, whatever I think of him, I've got my problems with him. I mean, you love him; he's a Philly guy.
I love him.
He made A Star Is Born. This guy has a cinematic sensibility, and he is a good voice to have in the room when you're making a movie.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said about Bradley Cooper. I don't even know if I agree with you. Anyway, go on.
I would say in this case,
you're saying You're saying Joker 2 would have been better if Bradley Cooper
had given notes.
Kind of given.
Because
I agree with that.
He was a producer. And look,
I agree with that. I don't know what that's about.
It's in the ninth circle of hell right now. So Bradley at least brings it up to the seventh circle
Cooper
of hell.
gave notes on Joker 1?
He was a producer on Joker 1. He was, because, he's Hangover. He's a Phillips guy.
You're right.
And so he was actually in a producing partnership with Todd Phillips up until after Joker, and then he gets off on his own. He's doing, he's doing Maestro and whatever. So they kind of part ways. But he was in the room on Joker 1 and gave notes. Also giving notes on Joker 1, which probably were not as welcomed as Bradley Cooper's notes, but Christopher Nolan was still at Warner Brothers at this point, and he's the guy that saved Batman, brought Batman back. So apparently Christopher Nolan had a couple notes on like how to distinguish it from his Batmans and how to sort of, both continuity and distinguishing and this and that. So Christopher Nolan was in on the first one, was not, at this point he's split from Warner Brothers. He's over at Universal making Oppenheimer, and so he's got no say. He never saw anything of the second Joker. And one source directly involved with the film sums it up this way: no one could get through to Todd. And the one thing about genre stuff, if you don't listen and pay attention to what the fan expectations are, you're going to fail. And so again, we're talking about, relative to the movie, I love when my fucking auteurs get out there and go wild. But when you're talking about a studio comic book movie, the studio infrastructure is going to be helpful to an extent. And completely ignoring all those checks and balances and oversights and budget oversights and notes and everything, completely ignoring it feels like a massive mistake, and it feels like when this movie started to get off track. Now, the people who surprisingly were not in, out of all the people who were not in the room on this movie, the one that is most surprising is that DC, which is, owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, owned by this conglomerate, DC, who has forever been trying to compete with Marvel in movies and try to do something that competes with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC, whose character Joker is their IP, had no input on this movie whatsoever. And again, the main reason is DC, like Warner Brothers, was in flux at this point. The former DC Films president, Walter Hamada, who worked on the first Joker and received an executive producer credit. This time there were no DC executives involved. Because this is the point where James Gunn and Peter Safran are taking over DC, and they're forming DC Studios. So
everyone gets to say, "Oh, I had my eye off the ball. Oh,
Yes.
I was dealing with this. I was dealing with that." So everybody gets to turn away, like this isn't their disaster. And you know what? For a lot of these professionals and C-suite execs, and a lot of the people over at DC and Warner Brothers, like they're going to be able to sweep. I think they're all going to survive their jobs and be able to sort of.
They all have plausible
they're all
deniability.
plausible
I mean,
deniability.
James Gunn definitely has plausible deniability.
Of course,
he didn't even
course.
see the movie until it
course.
was made,
Of
like
course.
until it was done. And he has been very clear about distancing himself from the movie and distancing the new DC regime from the movie. Recently, I think this past week on social media, a fan asked him, and he's this annoying guy who fucking responds to people on social media.
Yuck.
But like a fan reached out to him on social media and said, why does the DC Studios logo not appear in front of the movie? And then he responded, because it's not a DC Studios film. End of story. I have nothing to do with this. Don't put this on me. But this does put, even though he has no responsibility for it, this puts even more pressure on his Superman movie, which is the one now that everything is banking on to save DC and turn the
and this
train
hurts
around.
it because just like to the guy, the people that just don't, they just have a different life outside of movies and stuff. They're going to say, "Oh, Superman," but I hated Joker too. They're not going to be like, "Well, Gunn had nothing to do with it. It was the transition after the Warner Brothers Discovery kerfuffle."
Yep.
They're going to. It's going to hurt Superman.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt DC.
And
There's lingering consequences for this film.
Regardless of their involvement, this is a bad look for DC
Yeah,
because
it is.
This is the since Matt Reeves' The Batman in March 2022, which was their last real successful movie across the board. It's been 5 bombs in a row for DC. You're talking Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, Blue Beetle, and now Joker 2. So it seems like what happened, in short, is that DC and Warner Brothers are in a state of transition. It's chaos over there. An old regime is leaving, a new regime is coming in, and in the midst of all that, they said, "Well, we don't have to worry about Joker 2.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fine. It's Joker 2. Of course they're gonna. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. So that's the one thing we don't have to worry about. Right. But you can never say that. No. You always got to keep an eye on these things.
And they've been doing so well. They had Dune.
Beetlejuice.
They had the surprise Beetlejuice. But the surprise extra goodness of the Beetlejuice finances
does not make up for this.
Doesn't make up for the disaster of this nonsense.
Because it feels so avoidable. And in the vacuum where Todd Phillips is not listening to the studio or DC, he's not talking to James Gunn, he won't answer James Gunn phone calls. In that vacuum, he was listening pretty closely to 2 people, Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. This movie, it's now come out. Apparently the original idea for this movie came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. Which is
it's not good enough. It's not good enough.
It's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. So the idea came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. We also found out that Joaquin and Gaga were rewriting lines in their trailers, and there was a lot of that going on. Apparently Gaga encouraged Joaquin to sing live, and Joaquin encouraged Gaga to sing badly, so it was truer to her character. So
Phillips
the talent is running wild on this movie with all their ideas. And Todd Phillips specifically told Vogue, he's talking about the making of the movie, and he's like, you're like, okay, this scene works, let's just go shoot it. But then Joaquin's like, no, let's have a quick meeting about it. And then 3 hours later, we're rewriting the scene on a napkin. And what's great about Lady Gaga, and he's trying to say this as a positive, what's great about Lady Gaga, she really holds her own, both off camera, when we're in the trailer tearing things apart, which she probably spent the night before learning, but also on camera. It was not a small feat. And then Joaquin Phoenix told Vogue in the same interview, I encouraged Lady Gaga to sing poorly. I remember asking her to sing without her vibrato. She has a beautiful vibrato. It's too beautiful. I think she felt naked without it. But as soon as she moved away from the technique, she unlocked her character's voice. So...
agree to disagree.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a second. Because look, in theory... kind of an interesting idea.
Brother, this is the most in theory. This is an interesting idea movie of all time. Because in theory, everything about this movie is good. In theory, this all could have been great. In theory, everything we're saying could have been framed positively. And then he got $200 million from Zaslav.
Because that's
that could have been good. And then he made a musical, and then Joker is subverted expectations, and it was awesome. And we creatively collaborated together in our trailer, and Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga were writing notes on a napkin. Like, we could have said every single thing we said in this podcast so far with a positive voice if the movie was good. But I think what needs to be said now is that this movie was so bad, and that's why it makes every single link on this chain, this story you're telling us, so fucking insidious and so detestable. Because what all of this yields is an ugly, boring slog. Yep.
And when everybody realized that, the moment everyone realized that and realized, I think probably when the big urgent email went out internally at Warner Brothers was at the Venice Film Festival, because this was also a huge mistake. They went to Venice because, look, and again, a huge mistake, but maybe it's excusable because the first Joker did so well. It won the big award. It won the top award at Venice when the first Joker came out.
And then made $1 billion.
And made $1 billion.
So it's like, all right, run it back.
So
I get it.
The problem is, though, they took this movie to Venice without doing a test screening of it. They had not even test screened this movie. And they take it to Venice. And once you take it to
Apocalypse Now can.
Well, again, that's the beauty of Apocalypse Now is that it could have been Joker Folie too. It could have gone terribly. Right. And that's the miracle that it didn't. But so they go to, and once they're taking it to Venice, the cat's out of the bag. Pandora's box has been opened. Critics have seen it. The reviews are starting to get out. They're going to percolate. Word of mouth is going to spread. You cannot put it back in the box after it goes to Venice. So they take it to Venice without a test screening, which apparently the studio did not want to do. But again, Phillips pushed back, and Phillips got his way. And so they took the movie to Venice, and that's when everybody was like, uh-oh. It's starting to get bad reviews.
Got terrible reviews at Venice.
Got terrible reviews coming out of Venice.
It's a terrible movie.
It's a really bad movie. And then that leads to a crisis in the marketing, because the first trailer that came out, you remember, was well received.
Oh, people were losing their shit.
Right? How did he do that shot on the glass?
Is this the greatest shot of all time?
No, it's not.
Is the greatest shot of all time Joaquin Phoenix leaning over and smiling into a red lipstick stain on glass? No.
But all of these hardcore fans, all of the
it's not even the best shot in the movie, the trailer.
All the core fans loved that trailer. So out of the gate, the marketing is looking good.
Because on paper, this rules.
Right, exactly.
Harley Quinn, Lady Gaga. Okay.
But then once the bad reviews start to come out, once this people start to hear it's a musical, then the marketing starts to have this crisis where it tries to start marketing the movie as something that the movie isn't. And that's what I think sets up for the D Cinema score, is the marketing then
be specific. What is it, and then what are they pitching it as?
Yes.
Because I don't know what it is. How were they marketing it, in your opinion, that was sort of not true? Or what was the lie?
I think they were, they were literally showing scenes in the trailers that weren't in the movie.
Oh.
And B, they were, I think, trying to play fast and loose with the musical element of it, and trying to, in the trailer, present it as more of, I think, what it should be if it was going to be a musical, which is this sort of all-out, 100-mile-an-hour, big, maximalist sort of Broadway musical version of the Joker story, where, as we'll talk about in our review, it was not that at all. And then so the marketing starts to get sort of, just sort of unclear, and then people are like, the marketing isn't matching what I'm hearing about the movie. And then in the final 2 to 3 weeks, they just started to pull marketing dollars. They just started to pull marketing, which is a sign that they have no confidence in the movie, and they're not going to throw good money after bad.
What?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? That's so embarrassing.
This is a Batman
movie.
They knew what they had.
That's so embarrassing.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about what I think is the big scapegoat right now, because everyone, again, is trying to figure out, what do we blame this on? Who do we blame this on? What do we blame it on? How do we prevent this from happening again? And I think the big scapegoat that people are coming up with is that nobody wants to see a musical sequel to The Joker. That the big mistake that Todd Phillips made was trying to make this a musical, quote unquote, and that's not what the audience wanted, and it's a huge mistake, and that's why this went south. It was just a bad creative decision. Now, I understand that it's common knowledge that if you have a $200 million budget, you can't make a musical. Like, because musicals are not going to make that much money. You know, there is certainly a fan base for it, but not a huge fan base for it. I mean, the best ones, Mamma Mia, whatever, you're looking at like 30, 40 million, you know, like, opening weekend. They're not, and which is exactly what this one did. Now, I do think Wicked might do pretty well. It's got a holiday release this year, but typically musicals don't make a whole lot of money. Definitely not the kind of money that Warner Brothers needed for this movie. But Joker 2 is such a unique movie considering how well the first one did. And the first one did well by breaking a lot of rules. You know, it was the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. It even compared to the Nolan run, it gave the bleakest vision of the Batman universe yet, and it did incredibly well. So I don't think that this franchise necessarily has to play by the normal set of rules. And there have been a lot of successful comic book movies over the last 20 years that have played very fast and loose with genre and style. And there have been a lot of unconventional comic book movies that have done very well at the box office. I think the big problem with Joker 2 is not that it's a musical. The big problem is that it's not a musical. It is not a musical. It is a half-assed musical at best, combined with a half-assed courtroom drama. It has no conviction, no faith in itself, no ambition, no vision. The musical sequences are barely directed. The songs are just like picked at random from like the mid-century standard songbook. There is like it's like, do you want to make a musical or not? Because this is half-assed at best. So I think instead, if they had said, okay, we want to do Joker 2 as a musical, and if they had leaned in hard, gone maximalist and big and Broadway, but still make it like fucked up and jokery, and then the reviews coming out of Venice were not like yikes, but were more like, oh wow, you got to see this thing. They did a musical, and it goes hard, and it's like a fucked up Joker musical. I think that is a clear winning marketing strategy for Joker 2, and I think that gets butts in seats. Because
I met Joker, and then it's like Chicago with the lights behind him, and he shoots the lights out, and then it says, Joker, or it's like his face or something. It writes itself. Just do fucking Chicago. You're standing in a courtroom. Do Billy Flynn. It's fucking easy. Do Sweeney Todd.
Yes.
Do anything. But Brett, I'll push back and say that the even better idea than doing a musical, not doing a musical at all. If you really wanted to make money, I get it. They had to do a musical because it came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream. And otherwise, he wouldn't do the movie. But let's pretend that like you waited 2 weeks and then asked him again when he forgot about the dream. Don't make a musical, and in fact, make a Joker movie where the Joker does some Joker stuff.
That would have been nice.
I just think that from my producer brain, that's what I would have done. You know what's fucked up is like the musical is a beautiful, fun idea and subversion, and the one that you pitched would have been, I think, a really fun, cool movie with Lady Gaga. Like, imagine if she dressed up like Harley Quinn and the Joker was like the Joker and stuff like that. That would have been really good. But in lieu of that whole idea, why didn't they just do? Can we talk about can I talk about the movie a little bit?
Let's talk about the movie because I think go ahead, please.
No, all right.
What are the actual reasons this movie failed?
Well, it's boring. It's overlong. It's boring. It doesn't work. I don't buy that Harley or the whole I don't care about Arthur Fleck. I don't care about his relationship with Lady Gaga. Their love is it's not too fucked up for me to get on board with. It's that I don't care about them and it doesn't matter, and their love isn't presented in an interesting way. I found the first half to be boring, and I found the second half to be deathly boring.
Yeah.
I think coming out of that being said, the movie looked very, very good. And that Christopher Nolan camera is still so part of Warner Brothers. It's crazy. There's so much in Joker, which I saw in 70 millimeter IMAX.
That's a good slice of the budget.
I wanted to make sure that I saw exactly it in its best form ever, so I could be as critical as I wanted. And I can never say to myself, "Well, I never saw it in 70 millimeter IMAX." Well, I did, and some of those shots were absolutely stunning and very Nolan-esque. But Brett, the whole rub on this movie is here's kind of what the take is. Phillips just cashed the check. And then, as a fuck you to all of the fans. See, here's the story.
Yeah.
Here's the
this
story.
Is such bullshit.
No, here's the story. Todd Phillips is a Tim Dillon Democrat that didn't like that all of
Tim Dillon in the movie, by the way.
Tim Dillon in the movie. Todd Phillips didn't like that Incel Nation responded to his like incel fanboy movie Joker, and he detested that he had become sort of the hero of this MAGA adjacent incel underculture. And he was mad about this, and he wanted to say fuck you to all of the fans that made his $1 billion hit a $1 billion hit. So what he was going to do is he was going to take their little character Joker, and he was going to flip it on their heads and make them hate the Joker, and then he's going to show them just how dumb the Joker is, and Joker's not even Arthur Fleck, and the Joker's that. So that's sort of the impetus for this movie, and sort of the spin on it is this is Phillips' fuck you movie, and there's something inherently Joker about giving such a massive, undescribable fuck you. The reason that doesn't work at all is like the best fuck you, Brett, is if the movie was totally subversive, not what they ordered, and rocked.
Yeah.
That is a fuck you.
Yeah, because the big problem with that
to
theory,
just fall on your face and make a boring movie as a fuck you. Well then, then you sure showed me, Todd Phillips, egg on my face. I was bored and antagonized the entire time. You got me. You're the Joker. If that was the goal, then you succeeded. I can't imagine that was his goal, though. I feel like that is revisionist internet fanboy nonsense.
That's so revisionist.
You know what I mean, Brett?
There's one scene at the very end of the movie that sort of points to that theme of like where Joker sort of comes face to face with his like cult followers and is kind of seeing himself for the first time. But that is a like tiniest fraction of the movie, and it's a scene that comes way too late to sort of mean anything or matter. The reason that theory holds no water is because this movie doesn't do anything or say anything or mean anything.
I know.
I was sitting there for the first like 5-10 minutes, and I was like, nothing is happening. Like nothing's happening in this movie. There's no dialogue, there's no character development, there's no beats, there's no set pieces, there's no action. Like you just watch Arthur Fleck wander around his prison hospital,
and it's pretty,
and it's very well shot. And occasionally he'll sort of break into a little line of a song, and he meets Harley Quinn. But I took my phone and I started paying attention to the time, and I was like, I'm gonna see when like the first thing happens in this movie. When is the first? And also, we're not talking about like, fucking Antonioni, like intentional sort of absence of action. We're talking about Jim Jarmusch. We're talking about like
Joker 2.
We're talking about like they aren't making a movie. Like they forgot to make the movie.
They're antagonizing the audience.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
They
lost the thread.
So 10 minutes in, still nothing. He's just wandering around the prison. They're just repeating plot points from the first movie. He meets Harley Quinn. I'm like, oh, maybe this is the first thing that happens.
I was like, here we go.
Nothing. There's nothing happens. They make eye contact and they have a little vibe, but nothing's happening. Nothing's happening in this movie. More walking around the prison, more singing little fragments of songs. Still no ideas. Still no direction to the movie. Still no plot
in
points.
The rain.
The first.
He doesn't do singing.
The first music. I mean, he might as well. He's doing just the most
Singing
obvious overplayed standards. The first musical number he does, the performance is so silly. Joaquin's ass is just like hanging so far out in the breeze on these musical numbers. It's crazy.
I hope he feels like a big man
crazy.
being so antagonistic and so like he's so vulnerable and insightful in Joker 2, Joaquin. I hope you feel great about your big swings. You really taught us how to fuck ourselves. Good job. We all hated it. You showed us.
I guess the first thing that happens is Lady Gaga setting that piano on fire, which you said you forgot happens in the movie.
I remembered what you told me.
That happens at the 25-minute mark, Joe.
Dude.
That you are 25, and even that comes to nothing and means nothing
they escape
thematically.
Prison, spoiler, and then they like go
but
back.
Then they go
to
back
jail.
in.
But then it's like it doesn't. Look, you know me, guys. I'm not a plot head. The plot doesn't fucking matter. But it is funny that Harley's like.
But you need.
I
a plot.
was just.
You need plot.
Harley,
points.
you learn later, was like a rich kid that just was like a Manson girl, and then later on she's like, I just put myself into prison so I could meet you. But then when I wanted to get out, they let me go. I was like, oh, okay, is that okay? No problem. Whatever. It doesn't matter because I want to die during the movie.
So all the movie does is It avoids any sort of like new plot points, new character development. It just is this like weird relitigation of
that's the thing.
first
Joker
movie.
1's on trial. Like these guys.
But it's not on trial.
I know,
It is just
I know.
they just are like restating the plot of the first. It's like one long, like previously on sequence. It's like the entire movie. And meanwhile, genre-wise, they are like half-assing a musical for half the time, and then they're half-assing a courtroom drama for half the time. So you have like a half-assed musical with a half-assed courtroom drama, all of which is just rehashing the first movie in the franchise. It is
so weird.
Shocking how little of a movie there is in this movie.
Can I say another thing? Guys, I love Joaquin Phoenix. He is one of our best actors. I hate him for what he did to Todd Hayes, and I hate him for what he did to me at Joker Folie, Deux, but like otherwise, like Joaquin Phoenix is as good as it gets. And I fucking, who doesn't, love Lady Gaga. And I actually, like, I couldn't wait to watch Lady Gaga do a big song. I was like, okay, well, at least the part where Lady Gaga does the big song will fucking save this, right? She doesn't do a big song. Consider my expectations subverted. Todd Phillips really sucks. Like, I know people like the Hangover movies, and I know I'm supposed to too. I don't like it. I don't like any of them. I despise Joker 1, and I think I hate Joker 2 the most of them all. Anyway, Brett, enough is like, I don't know about you, but I'm done. I'm done talking about Joker 2 forever.
Well, let's sum it up. Let's sum it up with the two actual reasons why this movie failed. And again, I do not think making it a musical was risky, but it's a risk that could have worked if they'd actually done that idea. But they did not do that idea. So here's the two reasons this movie failed so badly. Number one, look, Joe, I love Joaquin Phoenix too, historically. Going back to Die For,
love him.
Gladiator, The Master,
he's a great
Inherent
everything.
Vice. We love this guy.
The Yards.
Napoleon.
The Yards.
Come on. Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix are right now at this moment. I don't care about historically this and that. Right now at this moment, the two most miserable, creatively bankrupt A-listers in Hollywood. They are Tim Burton and Johnny Depp circa Dark Shadows. They are cooked. They seem grumpy for no reason, even though they both have just won the lottery over and over again their entire careers. They're grumpy. They don't want to talk about this or that. They come up with movies from their dreams and then tell the studios to fuck off and let them fuck around with $200 million for a year. Their self-importance has got the better of them. They didn't know what to do with this movie. And even with the biggest production and marketing budget that money can buy, Warner Brothers could not obscure the fact that Todd and Joaquin did not make a movie here. I do think Joaquin is entering late career Johnny Depp territory, which is a problem. And this is like, I loved Napoleon. That's just last year.
You love Napoleon.
But this on top of the Todd Haynes thing is such a downswing for Joaquin. The performance doesn't resonate. It doesn't strike a nerve. All the weird Joaquin stuff isn't hitting. It's just silly.
The
it's
Joker
doing
just
nothing.
arches his
it's
back,
doing nothing.
looks up and shakes his chest the entire time. That's his only move. Joker, get a new move.
That's it. It's like you're watching someone try really hard to do something, but you have no idea what they're trying to do in this movie. The opening sequence where he's just wandering around the prison doing nothing. And then they play That's Life. And I'm like, I was like wanting to scream at the screen. Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening.
I keep going, but I'm miserable right now.
That's problem number one is Phillips and Phoenix.
I like that.
Shit the bed.
They stink.
Number two, the other reason this movie was such a bust is that Warner Brothers spent $200 million on a movie that they didn't have a clear plan for. And they just thought it was easy money. They thought it's just checking a box, and it never is. They didn't have a plan for marketing it to the core fan base. They didn't have a plan for how to deal with the musical elements. They didn't have any oversight. They didn't have any sort of strategy for handling Todd Phillips, sort of eccentricities and
You're saying it like it's a joke, but they didn't.
No. They also did not need to spend $200 million on this movie. This movie should not have cost that much. You go and you see it, and you're like, where is the $200 million? It's not up there on the screen.
$75 million.
So they basically just greenlit a massive budget, closed their eyes, crossed their fingers, and hoped for the best. But they must have covered their ears, too. Otherwise, they would have heard Todd and Joaquin loudly shitting the bed. Hey-o! Even way up in their C-suite. So what's the conclusion here, Joe? Number one, don't blame this on musicals. How dare you? Number two, this also isn't a problem with the marketplace. This isn't like I guess people don't go to the movies anymore problem. You cannot make that argument in the year of Deadpool and Wolverine making $1 billion. There you go. Right? This is a problem with Warner Brothers' development pipeline. It's a problem with their marketing strategy, and it's a budget problem. It's also a problem creatively with Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix, who need to take a big, long break and think about themselves. But this all might end up being an isolated problem because everyone, like you said, everyone has sort of plausible deniability. Yeah. At Warner Brothers, definitely at DC with James Gunn. So if James Gunn can now right the ship with his Superman, and look, they've got the Matt Reeves Batman universe, they've got the Penguin doing well on Max. Like
it's all water under the bridge.
There's a way for them to just leave this on an isolated little island of a garbage fire and move on. But for now, this is definitely a black eye. And the timing could not be worse. I mean, Warner Brothers Discovery's stock price is still in the cellar. It's near an all-time low. It's $7.67 a share. So this is not good for anybody over there. But they might be able to right the ship if old James Gunn can work his little nerd boy magic. We'll see.
I work here, but I'm down to do 2 jobs. If you want to replace DeLuca and Abdi with me, I'd happily do it. It'd be easy. I'd be like, Batman, $100 million, though. There you go. It's me running Warner Brothers. I mean, it's the Ghostbusters, but it costs $25.
Just like pretend, do that thing where
Universal?
Where you're pretending like you don't read the email and you just like you just stick with your original thing. So every time they come back to you, go, all right, sounds good, but the budget's still $100 million.
Yeah. Batman, $100 million. Love you guys. Get out there.
And Todd Phillips is like, I don't think this guy's like reading my emails.
No, it's like I need more money. Right. It's like, no, sorry, Todd, we're done. It was just capped at 100.
All right, I guess we got to make it with 100.
I would love to do that. Run a gigantic studio. And
somebody over there needs to
sit there and be like, Barbie 2, 110.
Don't give Todd Phillips $200 million to make the Joker sequel. What are y'all doing?
I don't know.
What are y'all doing?
You know what I hate about that movie? Just an asterisk.
Yes.
I'm glad no one saw it because it's going to reflect poorly on, quote, art movies.
Yeah.
Dumb people are going to think that, it's bad because it's, quote, artsy. No, it's bad because it's poorly edited, plotted, and written and acted. It's not artsy. It's just like you think that is artsy because you are, some people would say dumb,
culturally illiterate.
Some people would say culturally illiterate. Some people would say stupid motherfucker, whatever. No, I'm kidding. But people will see its affect and write off indie film, and that's like fucking pisses me off.
Here's who should not be catching strays here. Art films for sure. Creativity in genre films should not be catching strays.
Right. Big swings
should not be catching a stray here.
Zaslav.
Zaslav can. I mean, who cares? Maybe
I love pretending I like ride for Zaz.
What else should not catch strays? Well, let's look at the support.
Steve Coogan.
Yeah, the supporting cast should not be catching strays here because, oh my God, the best part about this movie is the casting. Whoever the casting director is needs a raise because you've got Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener.
Yeah. Keener's cool in the movie. She plays it really understated. I like it.
She's great.
Coogan.
You've got two of my faves from one of my favorite shows, Industry, Harry Lawdy. He's miscast as Harvey Dent, but I still like seeing him show up.
Imagine blaming him.
No.
You know what I mean?
And you get Ken Leung from Industry, Lost, lots of great stuff. So the supporting cast definitely should not be catching strays here. Musicals should not be catching strays.
Gotham. The city of Gotham.
Sure, Gotham City should not be catching a stray. The great musical, The Bandwagon, which they're watching at Arkham, should not catch a stray here. The Fred Astaire, Sid Charisse musical, Bandwagon, should not catch a stray.
And Francis Ford Coppola's this one from the Heart shouldn't catch a stray, even though some of the cinematography was based on that.
No, yes. So that should not catch a stray. Oh, but speaking of the cinematographer,
great cinematography,
our guy Lawrence Sher should not be catching a stray here.
No.
Courtroom dramas should not catch a stray. Musicals definitely. I think I already said that should not be catching a stray.
The American Prison Industrial Complex.
It can catch a stray.
That one can catch a stray. That can catch a stray.
Good. Sex scenes should not catch a stray.
There were sex scenes in this?
Remember when they fucked against the wall in the prison and it was so uninspired and dumb?
Yeah. I hated this movie. Let's talk about Saturday
This movie's
night.
terrible.
Fuck
this movie is terrible. Tim Dillon can catch a stray. He can catch all the strays. All right.